So you have a successful sequel, and now the road for a full-blown franchise has been laid out in front of us. Resident Evil Apocalypse put Alice and her crew in the heart of a zombie plague with no easy way to survive. The horror aspect started to morph heavily into action, and Milla Jovovich accepted the challenge. The ending of the film had more questions than answers. Why was Alice allowed to leave the Umbrella facility? What will happen to Jill, Carlos, and Angela? Battling the zombie horde's nemesis, Umbrella, and critics was just the beginning. Enter director Russell Mulcahy of Highlander fame. That's right, I said Highlander. And forget about its sequel or sequels because
there can be only one.
As I was saying, enter director Russell Mulcahy, tasked with directing a third movie that would keep the franchise train moving forward. The question is, would audiences continue to support it, or would they attack it into extinction like the thousands of crows that went off against Alice, Claire, and the survivors' crew? Let's get down to brass tacks. Welcome to my Why You Hate video series dissecting films, the good and the bad of them. Check out the Why You Hate playlist for a great horror discussion, and then check it out again. It's not going to hurt, I promise. I'm going to go over some reasons why some fans have issues with Resident Evil Extinction, and I know this will be a strong debate in this community for the lovers of this film and the detractors of it. So get ready to watch 80 million Milla Jovovich clones get killed, see scientists do the stupidest shit of all time, follow Claire's survivor crew driving a bunch of vehicles in the middle of a desert with no way possible that you could continually fuel them, and try your best to not get this film confused with The Road Warrior. Here are the reasons why you hate Resident Evil Extinction. Number 1. Story. Resident Evil Extinction is a 2007 action horror film that is a direct sequel to Resident Evil Apocalypse. It's the third installment in the series, and it's loosely based on the Capcom survival horror video game series of the same name. The film follows Alice and a group of survivors from Raccoon City as they attempt to travel across the Mojave Desert wilderness to Alaska and escape the zombie apocalypse. The possibility of a third film in the franchise was first discussed when Resident Evil Apocalypse opened at number 1 on the US box office, earning more than $23 million in its opening weekend. A conscious decision was made early on to make this the bloodiest of the Resident Evil films. Now, even if it was the bloodiest Resident Evil film so far, for some reason it didn't necessarily feel like it. Maybe it was the choice to have the story taking place during the daytime. There wasn't a sense of bleakness versus apocalypse. Maybe it's a Mandela effect situation. Either way, the story truly started to leave more and more horror elements behind and continued ramping up the action. Claire Redfield in the video games is in a never-ending search for her brother Chris. When the main plot of the film was planned, the original purpose of the trip to Alaska would be the reunion of Claire with her brother. The Chris Redfield subplot was scrapped, and the voyage to Alaska was rewritten as a simple quest for a safe haven. Director Russell Mulcahy's chief insistence with this film, and its big point of difference over its predecessors, was that it be shot not at night, but in blazing sunshine. Temperatures would often be in excess of 130 degrees Fahrenheit on the Mexican locations.
The conditions are severe.
You can cook out here if you want to. Turkey bacon. I cooked some turkey bacon on top of Yukon the other day. Grease just rolling down the hood, all in the grill. I mean, it was good too.
You can throw me on the beach, with the sand in the water at 100 degrees and I'm straight. And it was a lot of sand. I would have preferred a little bit of water with that. But it was cool. I liked the heat, actually.
Various members of the crew frequently would have to be treated for dehydration.
It really, actually, I think, has helped me as an actor because you don't have to pretend. Like, you are feeling it. You're totally feeling it.
I think the heat is so immense that you find that everybody looks out for each other. You never take one bottle of water. You bring somebody else another bottle of water. You try to really look out to make sure that everybody's okay.
The idea of the film taking place during the day was interesting, to say the least. To be honest, it was refreshing, even if it was way too reminiscent of The Road Warrior. The original script, though, included some flashback sequences depicting the trial in the International Court of Geneva. The Umbrella executives were to be convicted for the genocide, but the hearing came to an abrupt end when an army of undead barged into the courtroom. One of the few additions in the later drafts of the script is the initial attack of the Desert Gang. Originally, Alice would discover an abandoned TV station. She would watch old footage on the screens depicting the destruction of the world due to the global infection. Her narration would unfold at that point. When the script was rewritten, this scene was dropped, and it was substituted with the assault scene. The only remaining hint is the fact that Alice meets the deranged family in a decrepit TV station. Her narration was also moved to the start after the title card. Early storyboards for the film reveal very different versions of scenes with Alice clones, like dozens of them inside some cocoons and not pods, one of them falling out of one to the ground, and encountering unseen creatures in some giant laboratory. These were probably made based on the first scripts, which did not have Umbrella making Alice clones go through traps inside their underground labs as they do in the film. It's possible this was one of the changes demanded by Milla Jovovich, since she revealed in interviews how originally Paul W.S. Anderson was going to have Alice turn into some kind of half-monster, but she disliked the idea. Changing the scenes with clones was probably another of Jovovich's demands, because scenes would include more nudity, clones walking around nude,
Have you seen my silhouette?
fighting the monsters nude, etc., and she already had the ending of the first film changed for similar reasons. Originally in that film, Alice would walk out of the hospital at the end fully nude. Number 2. Characters. Milla Jovovich wasn't interested in doing a third Resident Evil film due to her disappointment with Resident Evil Apocalypse. However, she changed her mind after reading the script. The nightmares of Alice indicate that she has a mild psychic connection to her clones, since some of their memories are transferred into her subconscious. This element becomes important for the sequels. Milla was amazing as usual in this role. She finds herself as a loner to protect innocent people in the beginning of the film, and then is forced to team up with Claire's survivor group. I wish they could have accentuated her backstory and connection to Umbrella a bit more though. Her main situation was dealing with Dr. Isaacs and finding out that she was endlessly cloned. Sienna Guillory was offered the chance to reprise her role as Jill Valentine from Resident Evil Apocalypse, but had to turn it down due to scheduling conflicts with Aragon, and the character was then written out of the sequel. There is no doubt on God's green earth that this was easily one of the biggest mistakes of the film. Jill was a standout character in Apocalypse and gave at least some balance to Alice being showcased as the main badass. When Jill was missing from the film, I was thinking, what?
And you blew it! You blew it!
Why would they not find a way to include Sienna? She was very fond of Apocalypse and seemed to enjoy being part of the franchise.
It's really liberating actually to have such a kind of sexy outfit. In most films I'm like, no, don't dress her up sexy because then she can't be sexy. You know, being sexy is not about looking sexy, it's a quality. It's not a look, but actually, it kind of works. You know, you watch playback and it's like, who's that fox? Oh yeah, the hair's great and the makeup's great and the costume's great. Oh my God, I'm inside that thing. Great, moving it around like a little toy.
It also diminished the logic of the story because once Alice reunites with Carlos, there's no mention of what happened to Jill. We would see her return to the franchise later on, but this was a true missed opportunity. Bringing the band back together for at least one film would have been a boss move. Claire Redfield's role in the movie was different than in the games. She leads a convoy of survivors across the dead desert, but in the games, she's on a mission to find her lost brother Chris Redfield. Ali Larter was a breath of fresh air in this film. She is no stranger to work in horror and genre projects. Her version of Claire was caring, brave, and still badass. A good balance for a character that obviously was inserted to take the sting out of the omission of Jill Valentine. I think the third act doesn't do her enough justice because she leaves with the survivors and it basically becomes an Alice finale. There was much speculation that the well-known character from the video games Leon Kennedy would make a cameo and his role would expand in the upcoming fourth film. For a long time, it was rumored that the known actor Jensen Ackles would be cast as Leon Kennedy, but this never happened. The early draft of the script reveals that Kmart's real name is Elizabeth Jane Case. Now, as a new side character in this film, she was fine and surprisingly stood out amongst everyone. But one of the biggest character situations was surely the return of Carlos, and it was awesome. Oded Fehr is an actor who always makes an impression. His charisma is undeniable, and again, just like explained about Jill from Apocalypse, having a returning character was a welcomed sight. His reunion with Alice was sweet, but not too over the top. Unfortunately, this was all super short-lived, way too short-lived, as he got bit by a zombie and decided to sacrifice himself to allow the survivors to get to the helicopter. It was a heroic move, no doubt about that, but again, can't we have a few characters that don't die around Alice? LJ returned as well, and it was good to see him. Mike Epps has a lot of charisma and of course some of the comedic elements that these films truly enjoy, but while his return was good and his possible romance with Ashante's Betty was cool, let's be honest, he was very stupid after getting bit, and because he did that, it ended up costing Carlos his life as well. Number 3, even more action than before. If you thought Resident Evil Apocalypse was leaning into action more than horror, then get ready for full-fledged martial arts weapons, vehicle mayhem, and also a tryout for Professor Xavier's X-Men.
For this movie in particular, I have to use these really cool knives called kukris, which are real weapons used by the Nepalese Gurkhas. They only used one, where I used 2. It's very, very vicious kind of... It's very vicious kind of fighting.
I mean, in this movie, Alice could give Jean Grey a run for her money.
Bullshit!
A huge miscalculation in my opinion. The zombie aspect was less and less important. If action was going to be the focus, then I think the zombie angle should have been strengthened as well. I mean, yeah, there were zombies in the movie, a ton of them actually, but the threat of them felt a lot less important than the first 2 films. There's a point halfway through the movie where I even almost forgot about the zombies being in it. That's not to say the filmmakers didn't need to add to the mythology to keep fans' attention, they just needed to increase the zombie impact. Number 4, finale and loose ends. The finale is basically Alice battling mutant Isaacs in a showdown that would make Jean Grey and Emma Frost jealous. I mean, all this mind power stuff is really bordering on comic book territory. Not that that's a bad thing, but for the Resident Evil franchise, you have plenty of mythology to hone. Alice finds her clones and basically sets up a showdown for the next film with her very own army. There's some coolness to this concept for sure, but I didn't particularly think the finale was strong. She fights Isaacs, they go back and forth, they use their mind powers, they return to the laser room, and then that's pretty much it. It felt like they were running out of ideas. The behind-the-scenes stories actually verifies this. The film had tons of possible story beats all throughout it. Some were decent and some were genius university type dumb. The initial script explained that shortly after the events of the second film, Angela Ashford was killed in an attack by Umbrella soldiers. While this was left out of the film, the novelization explains that Alice, under Umbrella's control, killed her. Thank God this was not in the film. What the hell were they thinking? Hey, let's have Alice kill the little girl? That would have been such a huge mistake. Thankfully, they realized that and never used that idea. That said, it was another example of a surviving character not getting any due in this film. Shame on you, Extinction. The name of the terrifying mutation that Dr. Isaacs morphs into during the final sequence is never mentioned in the film. The creature, however, is lifted directly from the video games and is called Tyrant. The complete name of the deadly virus is Tyrant virus. T-virus is just an abbreviation. The opening scene, which recreates a sequence from the first film, was scripted to be much longer. Apart from finding the picture of the married couple, Alice would discover the rest of the clues seen in the first film, namely the handwritten note or the drawer containing the weapons. Then she would enter the Red Queen's laser chamber. For pacing reasons, the scene that appears in the finished film was trimmed down. It is noteworthy that after Alice sees the picture and hears a gust of wind, she simply looks at the statue. This is the only clue that this scene is just a simulation and not an exact copy of the first Resident Evil film. The original Alice asked hello after she turned to the hall with the statue. Contrary to popular belief, the chronology for the third film is definite. Although trailers and the official website revealed that the story is set 5 years after the Raccoon City incident, the viewer does not have to rely on promotional material. The time period that has passed by since the beginning of the global infection is actually referenced in the film itself. When the convoy enters a decrepit Las Vegas, they observe that it is covered by desert sand.
It's just bigger than life. You just don't expect to see these kind of things every day, and you don't. But to see something like Las Vegas, like half burned and destroyed and covered with sand, is pretty unbelievable.
Working there was extremely hard. The sun and the temperature was amazing.
It was like 135 degrees, and these guys were working on Las Vegas, half buried in the sand, and it's just epic.
Alice's lines draw attention to the fact that for 5 years there was no one left to clean up the city.
This is damage to the front end of your car, which hit his car in the rear.
At the end of the day, Resident Evil Extinction made Alice one of the X-Men, dropped us into a Mad Max world while cranking up the action, and we as fans must deal with it.
Look, get the out of my face. Don't got no time. You're in my house now, girl, and we have prison rules.
You have to ask yourself, was this the right direction for the film? Did you want more zombies? Did you want more horror? That is a question only you can answer. As always, this video is not here to make you love Resident Evil Extinction or to hate it. It's simply a discussion to highlight the history and aspects of the film, good or bad, with you, the viewer. So what do you think? Are you a fan of Resident Evil 3? If so, tell us why. If not, let's discuss why you hate Resident Evil Extinction. If you haven't hit the like button for more content, please do. If you're not subscribed to the Night Watch Zone, this is the time to do it. Do it and become part of this fantastic movie community where you'll never love and talk about movies the same. If you like this video, check out my other Why You Hate videos and other content, including live streams here, and I'll see you there. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace.